Welcome everyone to today's presentation on the Meridian System. I'm Tania O'Neill McGowan and I'm very excited to be bringing you a series of presentations on a number of different subtle energy systems that are very important in human life and helping us find health and happiness and maintain that. The Meridian System comes from China, and we're going to delve deeply into that today. I have also done presentations on the human aura or the human energy field and the chakra nadi system, which comes from the India region. So please do take some time and check those out as well. This presentation does cover information contained in Energetic Kinesiology Chapter 6, which I co-authored with Dr. Charles Krebs. And then I've added additional information that I've garnered from other sources. For those of you who don't know me, I have a background in physics. However, at the same time that I was studying the physical sciences in a very mainstream university, I was also learning about human energies and these non-physical aspects of life. And that just always actually made sense to me. When I learned quantum mechanics, it very much reinforced the fact that science has actually opened the door to the possibility that non-physical aspects influence and shape our world and lives, and that door has never been closed. And a non-physical aspect to reality always just made sense to me, and so I started learning things in that space. I've gone on to be a teacher for over 20 years now. I've been involved in the field of kinesiology training, a type of complementary health, and I've studied many different types of energy medicine over the years. I recently completed a master's in integral health, a program that very much brings science and spirit and subtle energies together, learning them in a very professional, comprehensive way. And I've continued on at the same institute doing my PhD. So I bring a wealth of learning. I love learning and I've been doing it for a long time. So I bring that to these presentations and perhaps save you some time in having to read hundreds of books. So the human body is an energetic system with channels that serve as rivers of energy or rivers of light to provide structure for the body. These channels interconnect the physical universe with the pulsing living tissues inside us. Thank you, Cindy Dale. So traditional Chinese medicine is one of the oldest forms of medicine still in use in today's modern world. So thousands of years ago, the Chinese actually discovered subtle energy channels that flow through the body that are now known as meridians. Knowledge of these meridians gave rise to a complex and highly evolved medical system. So traditional Chinese medicine is one of the oldest forms of medicine, and it flourished because it was successful. So it continued through thousands of years because it did result in people living healthy, long lives. Chinese medicine is a coherent system of thought and practice that is the result of a continuous process of critical thinking and extensive clinical observation. It is based less on anatomy and more on holism, the idea that a person is a whole being rather than a collection of parts. All of life is seen as being interconnected in this system. And many of the older forms of medicine very much did see the human being as being a whole, rather than thinking we can pull apart the pieces and tinker with one of them and it won't have an impact on the whole. So in this system, all of life is interconnected, and that in here, inside of us, is connected to everything out there. And we know that's true. Our health is highly influenced by the environment we live in, the culture we're subjected to, our society, our family units. All of that affects the food we eat, the movement we do, the air we breathe, the quality of water we ingest, the emotions we feel, and all of those things influence health and happiness. So there is this deep connection between us and the world around us. And that even goes beyond the physical things that I've just discussed. There is this energy connection between us and the world. So let's talk a little bit about meridians. So the meridians are pathways for the subtle energy, which they call qi or qi, depending on which part of China or Japan that you happen to be in. Qi is the force that animates and informs everything. So we call it energy because it creates change in the world around us. So a force or energy is something that creates change in the world around us, and qi very much does that. Along these meridians, these lines, these channels that carry the qi, there are entryways, places where qi can go in and out of that meridian, and those entryways are called acupoints, or acupuncture points was the long word, and it's been shortened into acupoints in our modern world. The Chinese mapped out 20 meridians and a total of 670 acupoints. And they mapped these out a long time ago. So by 1100 AD, or of the current era, the Chinese had anatomically accurate figurines showing these acupoint locations. And later in this presentation, I'll discuss the fact that we can actually find those acupoints using physical devices. So, qi, an invisible energy or force, does not directly equate to the Western concept of energy as being a force like something like electricity. So it's very different from the physical energies like electromagnetism, which is the main energy we experience and are aware of in our daily lives. Qi has a very different quality from those physical energies. It's more aligned with the concepts of the early Western philosophers in Greek and Roman times that talked of a vital energy that maintained health and wellness. So if these meridians and their acupoints and the flow of qi through them is not able to be seen with our physical senses, how did these ancient Chinese know that they were there and were able to map them so accurately that we can now get a physical device and find the exact same points? And how did they then take that information and create this integrated system of healthcare that was so highly successful? Well, the thing is that some of these people, monks, very experienced practitioners, who spent many years in meditation and spiritual practice, actually developed the ability to see or perceive in another way these subtle energies or subtle structures and the flow of qi through them. So they could see or sense them, and therefore they mapped them out. They could see them the way you and I can see things on another human being's skin. They could see these moving through a person's body. Because these masters could see the patterns of energy, they could perceive which patterns were harmonious and balanced and led to a person experiencing wellness, and which patterns were disharmonious, indicating some sort of imbalance or disease. So by looking at the flows that were going on in people who were experiencing wellness, they could work out what patterns led to wellness in these meridian chi flows and what ones led to somebody becoming unwell. And then they were able to then articulate that in a very comprehensive system. The meridians form a network of energy channels throughout the body for distributing chi, which is this energy or force involved in helping life be maintained, vitality be maintained, thereby controlling all our bodily functions. Each of the meridians is linked to a specific organ or organ system. So each meridian actually takes chi, vitalizing nutritive energy, to a specific organ system in the body. So what they actually showed is that the body is a circular, is like a circle of interdependent parts, rather than a collection of separate pieces all working independently. Actually, everything is independent upon with each other. Now, chi passes through all the meridians and therefore all the body systems in a regular 24-hour pattern. And so this means that our meridians and the flow of chi through them participates in every facet of life. So every facet of life's daily metabolic and physiological processes. So there is no part of our functioning that isn't influenced by this amazingly intricate system. The Chinese discovered that disharmony in the meridians precedes illness. So they could find disharmony in this meridian system before somebody became unwell. So acupuncture or acupressure therapy involves stimulating specific acupoints so as to disperse the flow of chi and re-establish harmony. One of the premises of both energy medicine in the West and traditional Chinese medicine is that for every energetic imbalance, there are corresponding or related symptoms or disturbance in function at one or all levels of the body. So our energy reflects what's going on in our physical body, and our subtle energies also affect what is going on in our physical body. Illness is an energetic disturbance or imbalance, and conversely, healing is a process of restoring or asserting energetic balance once more. So just to help us understand the Chinese view, one of the reasons why the West has found the Chinese view of the body so confusing had to do with the ancient language it was developed in. So the language used to develop this system comes from so long ago, when people's lives were very different. They were simpler and more rural in nature. So it's an inductive lyrical language written in allegory and metaphor. So it evokes the experience of a largely rural world. So the language of traditional Chinese medicine is by and large unchanged for a long time. And so they explain things in a way that perhaps seems quite primitive in a modern Western society. But it's the reason they didn't need to change is because it worked. The system worked so comprehensively that the language is irrelevant if the medical system actually creates health and harmony. And so the language of it comes from such a long time ago because it was developed such a long time ago. Modern Western medicine is very new. And so by and large, it uses modern language to describe things. That doesn't make it better. It just means they're using different language to describe the same functioning of the human being in a different way. This Chinese view is also rooted in the philosophy, logic, sensibility, and habits of a civilization entirely foreign to our modern world. The Chinese medicine is not less logical than the Western system, just less analytical. All relevant information, including the symptom as well as the patient's other general characteristics, is gathered when a practitioner works with them, and all of that information is woven together in the diagnostic process. So Chinese physicians use inductive reasoning. They're looking at the whole. They do not name diseases as such. Rather, they are interested in a complex of patterns that make up the whole. So one of the things when you compare Chinese medicine to Western ways of diagnosing is they're looking at the whole. So two people could end up with the same collection of symptoms, but actually have very different things going on in their life that actually led to those symptoms arising. And so in traditional Chinese medicine, they're looking at the whole. They're looking at the physical things, they're looking at the emotional things for that person, they're looking at how they live their life, their family structure, their, what their daily life rhythms look like, and they're taking that full picture in the diagnostic process. Now, the Chinese called the meridian flows by organ names, not because they referred to the organs themselves. A meridian might feed an organ, but that's not its only role. So they named them for the organs because the energy sustains a particular organ, but not because that meridian was that organ or the only thing it does is about that organ. It was, it's more comprehensive than that. When the Chinese describe a meridian, they're not describing a static physical unit, but a matrix of dynamic energetic interactions that affects all planes of being. The Chinese do not see a physical body and a mind as being separate structures. Rather, they see a body, mind, spirit that creates an integrated being. A part cannot be understood only in its relation to the whole. So illness is situated in the context of a person's life and biography. So, fundamental properties of the universe, what the Chinese call the yin and yang. So the I Ching, one of the original, if not the original writings in traditional Chinese medicine, states the entire universe is an oscillation of the forces of yin and yang. Although yin and yang are complementary opposites, they are neither specific forms of energy nor material things. Rather, they are qualities used to describe how things function in relation to each other and the universe. So these are qualities, okay? And it's all about the comparison. Yin and yang really represent a way of thinking in which all things are but a part of a whole. So nothing exists in isolation in our world. Everything exists as part of a greater whole. Our city is part of a greater country. Our country is a part of the greater earth. Our earth is a part of the greater universe. So, everything is a piece of a greater whole. Yin and yang are opposite properties that define each other. No thing can exist in and of itself, but can only be defined by its opposite. So to describe something, you have to be able to compare it to other things the person you're describing it to knows about. So, that's how language works. If I start talking about something that somebody knows zero about, I have to start making relationships between that thing and other things they know for them to have any ability to understand. And so yin and yang is about defining things in relationship to its opposite. For instance, hot is the absence of cold. Dark is the absence of light. Wet is the absence of dry, and so on. So in the original metaphor, yin was the shady side of the mountain and yang was the sunny side of the mountain. So in yin-yang theory, these two properties are in constant interaction and relation. So all things have two aspects. They have a yin aspect and they have a yang aspect. No thing is or can be all yin or all yang. Even if there's only a little bit of yin in something that's mostly yang, there is still always that bit of yin, okay, and vice versa. Yin and yang mutually create each other and control or balance each other. Yin is associated with the qualities of cold, dark, matter, passivity, and rest, and it's considered feminine. It is the end, completion, and realized fruition. Yang, on the other hand, is associated with the qualities of heat, light, energy, activity, and movement, and it's considered masculine. It is arousal, beginning, and dynamic potential. So this is the symbol for yin and yang, and you see that within the dark yin, there is a little bit of light yang, and within the light yang, there is a little bit of dark yin, and they are constantly evolving into each other. These are the 5 principles of yin and yang. So all things have 2 facets, a yin aspect and a yang aspect. Any yin or yang aspect can be further divided into yin and yang. So if you take something that is yin compared to yang in that same system, if you take that yin aspect, it can be further divided into yin and yang by looking for other characteristics within it. Some will be yin, some will be yang. So every yin and yang thing can then be further divided because it's always about comparison and opposite. There'll be some yin and there'll be some yang in everything. Yin and yang mutually create each other. So they actually depend on each other for definition. So it's whatever you're choosing to look at in that thing then defines which bits are yin, which bits are yang. 4, yin and yang control each other, or another way of saying that is yin and yang balance each other. So we always have to have these 2 aspects for the world to exist as it currently does. Yin and yang transform into each other, and this constant transformation is the source of all change. Remember, the only constant in this world is change. For the Chinese, phenomena occur independently of an external act of creation, and there is no great need to search for a cause. In Chinese thought, events and phenomena unfold through a kind of spontaneous cooperation, an inner dynamic in the nature of things. So the way the Chinese are living life and viewing life within the greater universe is quite different to many people in the modern Western world. And so it can be hard to understand their perspective. But the way they see things is that it's not something that creates this universe, that creates our problems, that creates our ill health. It's actually the fact that there's this inner balance that needs to be maintained in the flow of things. So when that's out of balance, rather than looking for a cause, they focus on bringing back balance. So they're always looking at how to maintain balance and stay, in this dynamic interplay rather than focusing on where did the problem come from, they just look at, well, where are we right now, and focus on re-establishing balance. And that's quite a different way of operating than perhaps those with a Christian style background, where we believe there was a creator of the universe, and that there is always a cause for everything, which is the Western scientific perspective. So just to give you a little bit of idea about the structure of the meridian system, I do encourage you to delve more into this if you're interested, because I am keeping this lecture to a reasonable length. I'm not going to go into huge, great detail here. Just to give you an overview, we have 2 meridians on our midline. We have one that runs up the very center of the front of our body, called our central vessel, and another one that runs up the middle of our spine and up over our head, stopping at our top, in under our top lip, which is the governing vessel. Now, those 2 meridians are very much involved with the stability of the overall meridian system, so they're sort of extraordinary. We then have 12 bilateral meridians that also have their own acupoints, like the central and governing have their own acupoints. Now, bilateral means on both sides of the body. Most books depicting meridians and all their acupoints look like the pictures shown here on this slide, and they only show the meridian on one side of the body. But actually, all of those 12 meridians are on both sides of the body. So for every acupoint on the left side, there is then also a matching acupoint on the right side. So they're on both sides of the body with their own acupoints. Now, anatomical position in traditional Chinese medicine looks like these pictures with the arms in the air. And with that type of anatomical position, we then find that all the yang meridians actually run down the body. They say they come from heaven to earth, and all the yin meridians run up the body. So they say they run from earth to heaven. So there are 6 yang meridians and there are 6 yin meridians, and they actually are paired up into a yin-yang pair, as we'll look at in another moment. In addition to these 14 meridians that have their own acupoints, there are another 6 extra meridians that don't have their own acupoints. They weave between acupoints of these other 14 meridians. And so they're often called extraordinary meridians. And that gives us a total of 20. There are also secondary vessels that then connect these primary meridians to each other and to body organs and cells. And there are then acupoints that are called command points that regulate the energy flow between meridians and their associated organ. So the command points are acupoints on a meridian, but they're an acupoint that then is linked to a secondary vessel that takes qi from that meridian to somewhere else. So one of the main theories they work with in traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture is called 5-element theory. So everything is connected via a complex set of interdependent relationships that underlines the physical level of reality. The law of 5 elements articulates the flow of qi through the meridians. Now, this is not a law written by humans, the way we think of laws in the West. It's actually from people having seen the flow of qi through the meridians and worked out patterns that lead to wellness, patterns that lead to not wellness. And then they've come up with how that qi needs to flow through the meridians for health and wellness. And so the law of 5 elements is a way of re-establishing balance in the flow of qi through the meridians. Now, the Chinese did not emphasize the elements themselves. So it's not the elements that are the most important piece of this theory. Rather, it's the movement of qi through the elements that is the focus. So the 5 elements are named fire, earth, metal, water, and wood. Once again, we have potentially a language problem because they're using terms that aren't that well respected in modern Western society, with this idea of having elements controlling and influencing the world and people's health and well-being. But they were just, this was written so long ago, and they used terms that related to the world around them and that they saw in the world around them. Okay. So each element corresponds to one of the 5 major organ systems and contains a yin-yang pair of meridians. So in the earth element, we've got a yang meridian in stomach and a yin meridian in spleen. So each of the elements in those coloured circles has a yin-yang pair of meridians contained within it. And the fire element actually has 4. I won't delve deeply into that in this lecture. You're more than welcome to explore that further in your own investigations. We delve into it when we teach kinesiology. So each element has a relationship to many different things, not just the meridians. It has a relationship to the seasons and colour and smell, emotions, food, a whole range of things. And it's about keeping the balance across all aspects of our life and living in the rhythms of the world around us to create harmony and balance. So we have yin organs. You can see in this table, we have the heart, the liver, the kidneys, the lungs, and the spleen and pancreas. So yin organs are interior organs, and they tend to function continuously. So they have ongoing roles in our physiological functioning. The function of the yin organs is to produce, transform, regulate, and store fundamental substances such as qi, blood, and body fluids. And they do not have empty cavities, so they're a solid organs. The yang organs, we've got small intestine, gallbladder, urinary bladder, large intestine, stomach. So these are exterior organs that function intermittently. They're mainly responsible for digesting food and transmitting nutrients to the body. And these organs are empty cavities that things pass through or get stored in. So just a little bit more about the 5-element theory. So the law of 5 elements explains how the 5 phases maintain qi in a constant flow of movement and exchange. If any of the phases or elements are out of balance, the entire system then becomes unbalanced. So everybody has only a specific amount of qi flowing through their body. And therefore, if we have an over energy in some part of the system, the 5 phases, that means that there must be an under energy in another or multiple other places within that system. So over energy will lead to under energy elsewhere. So there are acupoints on the body which, when stimulated, actually open up qi flow from one meridian to another, and then that's how we can re-establish balance. If we open up the qi flow by clearing blockages, then the qi actually then re-establishes balance all on its own, because the qi flows through our entire system in a regular 24-hour period. So over 24 to 48 hours, the qi then re-establishes balance if it's given the opportunity to do so. So qi is a difficult concept to actually articulate accurately the way the Chinese see it, because we tend to use language that makes it sound more like a physical energy. But qi is actually the basis of all physical vitality. Qi is what creates life vitality. So rather than saying we have qi, it is actually more accurate to say that we are qi. So there is a healthy amount of qi in every human, irrelevant of your state of health right now. You actually have all the qi because you are qi. So you have all that you need to be vital and functioning at a high level in life, because qi is not created or destroyed. Rather, it's its balance that can be affected by local disharmony. So how we live our life will influence how we utilize the qi that we are. After receiving a core potential of primordial qi at birth, we need to sustain it throughout our life by the choices that we make in our daily life. So we maintain qi in the body from our interactions with the external world, including from the air we breathe and the food we eat. It is best to breathe deeply and to eat moderately in accordance with the seasons, to move smoothly, exercise without exertion, and match activities to the body's needs. This is how one keeps balance and creates health. So let's talk a little bit about types of qi. Now, we do have a comprehensive articulation of this in the textbook that I co-authored, so do feel free to delve in there and read it in more detail. I'm just going to give you a summary here. So Ku qi is in the food we eat, and Ta qi is in the air we breathe. So if we're breathing in healthy air, full of Ta qi, and we're eating vibrant food that comes from the earth, hasn't been highly processed, then it's going to be full of Ku qi. Okay? We take them in our daily life, and then they combine together inside of us to form what's called Sung qi. Now, put that to the side for a moment. We then have what's called Yuan qi. So this comes from the ancestral qi that we're born with. So we're born with what's called ancestral qi, and then that gets transformed inside of us into Yuan qi. Okay. Now, our Sung qi, which comes from the things we've taken in our daily life, then combines with the Yuan qi that we have inside of us all the time. And then that becomes the active Chen qi. So qi that we're taking in our daily life combines with the qi that we've come into this life with, and they form a Chen qi that then flows into our yin organs. Our yin organs, because remember, our yin organs are the ones that are solid and working continuously, okay? So they need more qi. I don't know if it's necessary they need more qi, but they're the ones function continuously. So the Chen qi, active Chen qi, flows into our yin organs to help maintain them with their ongoing role. And then the remaining qi is that the yin organs don't need then gets released, and that's called qin qi or meridian qi. So the yin organs take the qi they need, and then they release the rest into our meridian flow. And the rest of the qi then flows through all the meridians, going to the rest of the organs and cells of our body. So meridian qi is distributed to the physical body, providing an energy template to maintain our physical and physiological being. This is why it's important to eat good food and breathe deeply of pure air. Two of the most important things for our body to function is clean air and high quality food. If the quality of your food and or air is poor, you're going to be deficient in those types of qi, ku qi and ta qi that we can take in our daily life. And therefore you'll need to draw more strongly on your ancestrally derived yuan qi just to survive in your daily life. From a Western perspective, you can think of your yuan qi as adaptation energy, the energy behind our ability to adapt to all the stressful circumstances in life. The Chinese found that by doing certain exercises, the basis of Qigong and Tai Chi, you could build up another form of Qi, Ho Yuan Qi. So the reason that they do these very gentle, mindful exercise processes on a daily basis in China, either Qigong or Tai Chi, is because that helps to add an extra resource to your Qi flow. And so you're then not having to draw as much on your adaptation energy, your Yuan Qi. And so by eating well, breathing well, and doing mindful exercise that brings in qi to your being, you are able to actually cope more effectively with all the ups and downs of life. And once again, that is exactly what the Western literature tells us. And so these principles that they've been living off in China for hundreds and hundreds of years actually fit with what we know from Western research. They just use different language to describe it all. So Ho Yuan Qi provides another source of energy for adapting to stress. Hence, you can stretch the amount of Yuan Qi needed to cope with the stresses of life and lengthen your life, which is why they do Tai Chi and or Qigong on a daily basis, is to help. They found that it lengthens people's lives. And so actually, we cope better with all the stresses we encounter when we have a healthy diet, breathe well, and do types of exercise that sustain the physical body. Fancy that. As long as the qi flow in every meridian is balanced with respect to yin and yang, it is neither in excess nor deficiency, the associated organ receives sufficient nutritive qi flow to maintain the integrity of its structure and function. Any perturbation or imbalance, blockage of this flow will have immediate consequences for the function or physiology of the associated organ, causing some degree of imbalance in its physiology. By locating the energy blockage and the factors creating it, and then applying acupuncture or acupressure, which we do with a blunt instrument, stimulation of one or more acupoints to eliminate the energy blockage, healing can occur. So that's what one of the mechanisms in traditional Chinese medicine is, to actually stimulate acupoints, very specific ones, not just random ones, to actually stimulate acupoints either with a needle or a blunt instrument in acupressure, to then open up the flow of qi through the system again. Once the energy has been equalized, the physiological disturbance automatically returns to homeostasis, as the nutritive qi once more carries organizing energy into the disturbed tissue. And so qi is a mechanism for providing an energetic template that then guides cellular growth. And that guidance of cellular growth then helps us maintain health. And when the qi is blocked off from getting to the cells, they don't have that energetic template guiding their functions. They start to have issues. So now I'm talking about something that most of you out there aren't able to see. You might be feeling it, but not aware of it. So you have this, you're trusting me in this moment that this exists. But you don't need to trust me. There's actually a good body of evidence for the existence of the meridians and their acupoints and their role in health. So let's talk a little bit about that. So what began as an esoteric theory is now emerging as a verifiable science, as research explains the meridians as transporters of chemical, electrical, and etheric energies. So scientists have actually mapped the meridians thermographically. So that's measuring heat, and I'm going to show you some lovely pictures. They've also mapped them electrically and radioactively with modern technology. So acupoints have been shown to actually have a unique histological microstructure. So the cells directly beneath an acupoint have a slightly different structure to their neighbors. This is a real physical distinction that can be measured. So most acupoints are situated in small surface depressions. I mean, they're so tiny, we can't see it with the naked eye, but it's identifiable by palpation, and they are often hypersensitive. And then beneath these surface depressions, the epidermis, which is the outer layer of our skin, is actually thinner than where there isn't an acupoint. And it has a characteristic structure that's a bit different from the surrounding areas of skin, with some modified collagen fibers. So this is real physiological differences that have actually been discovered. Another way we've found in the physical realm the existence of these acupoints is through electrical measurements. So in the mid-1900s, they actually found, they took a galvanometer and measured the electrical resistance on people's skin. So electricity moves more efficiently through materials that have lower electrical resistance than things that have high electrical resistance. So like metal has very low electrical resistance, electricity moves through it very efficiently. Other things like a lot of plastics, wood, have a much higher electrical resistance, and electricity doesn't move through them so well. So what they found through measuring the electrical resistance of the skin were that there were points on the skin that had a much lower electrical resistance than around the skin around them. And they called them null points electrically. So null points are points on the surface of the skin of least electrical resistance. So that means energy can flow more efficiently in those places compared to other parts of the skin. So the skin normally has a very high electrical resistance, so it is easy to develop a meter to electrically locate these null points. So whenever the probe makes contact with an acupoint due to the lower resistance, the increased electrical flow is then converted into a sound or a light, and you found an acupoint. So the electrical mapping of these null points was very highly correlated with maps of Chinese acupoints. Now, it wasn't 100% correlated when you looked at a Chinese medicine chart of acupuncture, which was showing the points where you insert a needle into the skin, because those charts are showing you where a needle gets inserted, not always where the acupoints are. What do I mean? We go into detail of this in the book. What I mean is sometimes if they were to needle directly on top of an acupoint, it would actually go through, because the needle goes a little bit into the skin to reach the meridian, which is below the surface of the skin. The acupoint is on the surface of the skin and then delves in. So if they were to, some of the acupoints, if they were to needle directly on top of them and put the needle down to the meridian, they'd actually pass through either a nerve and or a blood vessel. Now, if they pass through a blood vessel and you start bleeding, you're not going to be happy with them. If they pass through a nerve, it's going to hurt and you will equally not be very happy with them. So some of the acupoints aren't actually needled directly where the acupoint is. They're needled slightly off they're needled on an angle. And so when you correlate these mappings of null points to the actual acupoints, it was highly consistent. When you actually compared it to needling points, not 100% correspondence, because some of the needling points aren't the actual acupoint, they're slightly away. Okay, so we found acupoints through differences in skin structure. We found acupoints through difference in electrical resistance, null points, and then they've also been able to show through heat patterns evidence of meridians and acupoints. Now, this isn't, none of this is completely conclusive all on its own, but when you start adding all these pieces together, it very much shows evidence that there is something real going on with these meridians and acupoints. So to take you through the infrared thermography, we're very lucky because my co-author, Dr. Charles Krebs, met and got to know one of the researchers involved in this research. And so we've been able to get access to some of the infrared pictures they created for their research. So that's excellent. So using infrared thermography, Schlebusch et al., that means, and others, has shown the presence of very specific pathways of heat following acupuncture treatment of specific acupoints. These pathways of heat ran exactly down meridian pathways, with many of the acupoints in the meridian being hotter than the pathway itself. As far as we know, there are no neurological or physiological mechanisms that could produce this pattern of temperature distribution. When the subject was experiencing a headache in her temples, the infrared images displayed intense warming, specifically on the side of the head and along the length of the gallbladder meridian down the body. And in traditional Chinese medicine, temple headaches are correlated with overenergy or excess heat in the gallbladder meridian. So let me show you that in visual. It'll be better than words. So this is just pictures of the two ladies prior to anything happening to them. This is just in the everyday world. You can see that normal body temperature is sort of in that yellow greenish range. Red is when things are getting hotter. Blue is when things are getting colder. So this is just showing you a side view of both of them. You can see there's no major heat signatures, a little bit of red, but not very much at all. So this is the lady experiencing a gallbladder headache. So as far as Western medicine is concerned, when you get that headache in your temples, it is just happening inside your head. But in traditional Chinese medicine, they say that headache is caused from overenergy in our gallbladder meridian. And our gallbladder meridian actually runs backwards and forwards a number of times on the side of our head. So when overenergy happens in there, it causes a lot of pain in the side of our head. And you can see that the heat isn't contained just to her head. It actually flows all the way down the side of the body, following that pathway the gallbladder meridian takes. So the gallbladder meridian has overenergy, which is shown by the heat. So energy causes heat. All forms of energy, when they're dissipating, cause heat, including these non-physical ones often do as well. Particularly, I've found chi flow in acupoints and meridians can heat you up when you get it flowing. And so this heat actually goes all the way down her body following that gallbladder meridian, which is over-energized. So just a little bit of visual confirmation that the way they were looking at these temple headaches in traditional Chinese medicine has a basis. Here we go, and this is our other lady. So this person suffers from chronic lower back pain. And one of the causes of chronic lower back pain in the traditional Chinese medicine understanding can be through acupoints in our back, along the lower half of our back. Those points, in traditional Chinese medicine, they call them association points, are believed to be where excess qi gets dumped from other meridians. So if they've got too much qi flowing through them, they'll dump it into these points that go along our spine on our back. So you can see that they've put needles into some points along this lady's spine, and they do that to then dissipate that excess energy that got dumped there, excess qi that got dumped there. And that meridian that they're working with is called the bladder meridian, and it actually has two pathways down our back. So both sides, there are two pathways. And so they've put the needles in one pathway, but you can see the energy is actually starting to flow in the other pathway next to it. And so that is the other pathway of the bladder meridian. So the excess qi is now starting to move through the bladder meridian to get it moving through the meridian system overall again. And you can see that it goes up the back and then down the legs in a very neat, tidy pattern. Now, if this was just a physiological reaction to having needles in your back, that heat signature would just radiate out equally in every direction. That'd be a normal physiological response, but it isn't. It's following a very distinct line up the back and then down the legs. You can see even individual acupoints themselves lighting up along the legs there. And so that is following the exact pathway that we know that the bladder meridian goes along. And there's no physiological pathway that can explain that particular heat signature arising. And they were able to show that in more than one person, that this unusual heat signature does arise. But not unusual if you believe in the meridian system. And the final piece of evidence I want to share with you is in the nuclear medicine space. So in the 1960s, a researcher, Professor Kim Bong-han in Korea, actually injected a radioactive isotope into rabbits. And they injected this isotope into specific acupoints and then mapped its movement through the rabbit's body. And what they found is that it followed a very fine duct-like tubule system. And that system that it followed didn't correspond to a blood pathway. It didn't correspond to a lymphatic pathway. It didn't correspond to a nerve pathway or a neuronal pathway. Rather, it was this whole separate system that it followed, and it corresponded with the meridians. So literally a physical thing, a radioactive isotope, when put into an acupoint, actually then went along the meridians and could be mapped. So concentrations in the tissue immediately adjacent to meridians were negligible. So it's not like it just went all over the place, which you'd sort of potentially expect it to do if it was just in the body and able to move around. So clearly it was actually following a particular pathway that exists in the body. When they injected it into a nearby vein, they got little to none in the meridian network. So what they found is through this is that the meridian system, it very much suggests that the meridian system is independent of our vascular system and that it is its own network that is so close to being physical that when you inject a physical thing like a radioactive dye into it, it actually follows it. Now, this research has been replicated in the 1990s by some French researchers doing a similar study in humans. And so they used a radioactive, different radioactive isotope, and they injected it into the acupoints of humans, and the isotopes uptake was followed by camera imaging. So a lot of those words may not make sense to you, but essentially what's happening is this thing that they're injecting is decaying radioactively and sending out little particles, which are called gamma particles, and then they're able to measure those with a camera. They do a lot of this work in medicine, medical and imaging. When needed, they'll inject a radioactive dye into people to then follow how it moves through the body for people's health and things like that. So they've then taken what's done regularly in medicine and brought it into this research space of meridians. They found that this radioactive isotope actually migrated 30 centimeters, that's quite a long, good period, distance, in 4 to 6 minutes along the meridian pathway. And this speed of migration was not seen when they injected it into random points on the skin. So they found that it actually moved very efficiently along a meridian pathway when injected into an acupoint. When injected into some random non-acupoint part of the skin, didn't happen. Really, really interesting research. Now, they have done a lot of fMRI brain scanning studies on various aspects of acupuncture, and they've used that to show unequivocal correlation between a specific acupoint stimulation on the surface of the body and highly specific patterns then showing up in a person's brain. Cortical and subcortical means the cortex of the brain and the subcortex aspects of the brain. So they stimulate an acupoint somewhere in the body that is known to do a particular function in traditional Chinese medicine, to influence a particular part of our functioning. And then they find that by stimulating that acupoint, it can be right down on the feet. There are things that then show up in our brain that are stimulated. So by stimulating acupoint, you're actually stimulating brain parts. Wow. These patterns of cortical and subcortical activation have no known nervous system connection to the points of the skin being stimulated. So they intentionally pick acupoints that you can't explain the patterns that show up in the brain scans from a physiological only mechanism. There's no reason that those parts of the brain should show up when they stimulate that point down on the feet or somewhere in the body. So stimulating different acupoints shows different patterns of cortical and subcortical activation. In addition, there are now a number of studies showing that activation of sham points, so non-acupoints, do not show any consistent patterns of brain activation. So you can't say that it's just accidental, because you can stimulate all sorts of points in the body and you don't get this brain activation. But you stimulate an acupoint and suddenly you've got a brain activation that matches what they have been working with in traditional Chinese medicine for a long time. Very, very interesting. Modern consciousness research reveals that our psyches have no real or absolute boundaries. On the contrary, we are part of an infinite field of consciousness that encompasses all there is, beyond space and time, and into realities we have yet to explore. So here's a list of references for you to then go ahead and have a little look. This is only a piece. It's the main ones I've used in creating this presentation. It's hard to encompass many years of learning and experiencing into all the references you've ever encountered. So I haven't tried to do that. Instead, I just give you the main ones that have played a role. I hope you found this lecture on the Meridian System interesting, informative, added to your body of knowledge. Please do encourage others to take a look and do go ahead and take a look at some of the other presentations I have available on the Patreon platform, as well as my YouTube channel, where the free resources reside. Thank you for your time today. I'm very honoured that you've spent time with me, and I hope that we cross paths again. Bye.